Jamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Kupitana Valabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Kupitana Valabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Munatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Privajakacharya Satarasata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Privajakacharya Satarasata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Rantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Haribo Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Devamrita Swami Namane Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachayani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastate Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 31, which is entitled, I'm going to tell you in a second, Narada instructs the Prachetas. You know, the story always gets good when Narada Muni enters the scene. So text number 3 is Enter Narada Muni. Text number 3. Tanirjita prana mano vacho drisho jita sanan shanta samana vigrahan premale brahmani yojitat manaha sura saredyo dadrishe smanardaha. Tanirjita prana mano vacho drisho jita sanan shanta samana vigrahan premale brahmani yojitat manaha sura saredyo dadrishe smanardaha. Tanir jita prana mano vacho drisho jita sanan shanta samana vigrahan pare male brahmani yojitat manaha sura soredyo dadrishe smanardaha. Word for word translation. Tan, all of them. Niyajita, completely controlled. Prana, the life air, by the pranayama process. Manaha, mind. Vachaha, words. Drishaha, and vision. Jita asanan, who conquered the yogic asana or sitting posture. Shanta, pacified. Samana, straight. Vigrahan, whose bodies. Pare, transcendental. Amale, free from all material contamination. Brahmani, in the supreme. Yojita, engaged. Atmanaha, whose minds. Sura Asura Idya, worshipped by the demons and by the demigods. Dadrishe saw, Sma in the past, Naradaha, the great sage, Narada. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. After practicing the yogasana for mystic yoga, the prachetas managed to control their life air, mind, words, and external vision. Thus, by the pranayama process, they were completely relieved of material attachment. What a relief. By remaining perpendicular, they could concentrate their minds on the uppermost Brahman. While they were practicing this pranayama, the great sage Narada, who was worshipped both by demons and by demigods, came to see them. Purport. In this verse, the words pare amale are significant. The realization of Brahman is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. The absolute truth is realized in 3 phases: impersonal effulgence, Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. In his prayers, Lord Shiva concentrated upon the personal features of Parabrahman, described in personal terms as Snigna Pravirghana Shamam. Ghana Shamam. There we go. For those present who are disciples of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, you know that his brahmachari name or his initiated name before he took sannyas is Ganasham. Ganasham means beautiful dark form. Snigdha Pravid Ganashamam. That was from Lord Shiva's prayers just a few chapters earlier, chapter 24 of this 4th canto, text number 45. Following the instructions of Lord Shiva, the prachetas also concentrated their minds on the Shamasundara form of the Supreme Brahman. Although impersonal Brahman, Paramatma Brahman, and Brahman as the Supreme Person are all on the same transcendental platform, the personal feature of the Supreme Brahman is the ultimate goal and the last word in transcendence. The great sage Narada travels everywhere. He goes to the demons and the demigods and is equally respected. He is consequently described herein as Sura Suredya, worshipped both by demons and by demigods. For Narada Muni, the door of every house is open. Although there is perpetual animosity between the demons and demigods, Narada Muni is welcomed everywhere. Narada is considered one of the demigods, of course, and the word Devarishi means the saintly person among the demigods. But not even the demons envy Narada Muni. Therefore, he is equally worshipped both by demons and by demigods. A perfect Vaishnava's position should be just like Narada Muni's, completely independent and unbiased. A perfect Vaishnava's position should be just like Narada Muni's, completely independent and unbiased. I've got a dull brain, so let me just do this one more time. A perfect Vaishnava's position should be just like Narada Muni's, completely independent and unbiased. Wow. Om Jnana Timirandasya. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prabhupada's purports. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cham Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchaka Patarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we're hearing about the continued adventures of the brothers Prachetas, having well, I guess they've renounced their grihastha life. At this point, they left their wife with a perfect son, and they've gone to an ashram. Where is it they've gone? Well, it just says they went to the seashore in the west, where the great liberated sage Jajali was residing. I've never heard the name of Jajali, so if anyone here knows something about Jajali, then please share at some point. And being blessed by Lord Shiva, they're becoming attractive to all sorts of devotees, including Narada Muni. So now Narada Muni has come to them at the summation of their yoga practice. It's interesting to note what sort of service they are doing. First, of course, they were engaged in vandanam, prayers. They repeated the prayers sung by Lord Shiva. Although now they're doing some yoga, some Ashtanga yoga. They're controlling their life air, their minds and their words, and their external vision. What an interesting word here. Nijita prana manovacha drisha. Nirjita means to control, of course, the life air, prana, the mano, their mind, vacha, the words, and drisha, what they even look at, which is relevant for a lot of us in the age of internet and pocket devices. You can just be looking at so much garbage all the time. But they control their vision, presumably seeing the deity form of the Lord. So they're engaged in their Ashtanga yoga. And by pranayama, they're controlling their mind and they're relieved of the material attachment. And by remaining perpendicular, they could concentrate their minds on the uppermost Brahman. So someone help me out here, but it just sounds like they took some sort of vow to stand upright as part of their yoga. Of course, there's many different asanas, and there's the Tadasana, where you basically just stand upright. Is that right, Taraka Prabhu? You were commenting on this perpendicular word?
Perpendicular, my understanding of it was that when sitting in
Sitting upright.
sitting upright, Srila Prabhupada would speak about this often. He would, instruct us to sit properly. Probably heard. So perpendicular, your head, neck, back are in a straight line, perpendicular to the ground, perpendicular to your legs when you're sitting cross-legged. That's my understanding. But perhaps they were standing. I don't know.
Well, we just know it says Jita Asana. Of course, there's many asanas, and one of them is just to stand upright, basically, called Tadasana. And we might take it for granted, but of course, if you're doing that as a meditation practice for many hours at a time, it could be quite challenging, and even just to sit straight. So whether sitting or standing, basically, they were in a very fixed position in the practice of yoga. So yoga is very valuable. It's not just the way we pay the rent at the Bhakti Yoga Center. There's some genuine value there. And for many, under good guidance, it can help them to become closer to the Lord. And that's exactly what happened for them. They concentrated their minds on the uppermost Brahman, Para Brahmane, Amale Brahmani, Pare Amale Brahmani. So we know, of course, Brahman can have many meanings. Impersonal Brahman, Paramatma, the super soul. But here, specifically, it means Shyamasundara Krishna. We know this because that's how Lord Shiva was praying. That's how he taught the Prachetas to pray and to meditate on the Shyamasundara form, which is actually the topmost form of Krishna. Oh, Yasodeva saying something controversial, but I got something to back it up in the Padyavali of Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami says, Shamam eva param rupam. I think the Sanskrit's pretty easy. Shamam eva param rupam, puri madhu puri vara, vayaha kaishurakam dhyayam, adya eva paro rasaha. This is Rupa Goswami, our guru. So don't shoot the messenger. He says the form of Shyamasundara is the supreme form. The city of Mathura is the supreme abode. Lord Krishna's fresh youth should always be meditated upon. Kaishurakam dhyayam. And the mellow of conjugal love is the supreme mellow. So the Gana Shama, the beautiful dark form of Krishna, Shyamasundara, is the supreme form for meditation. Elsewhere, Rupa Goswami says, do not meditate upon Shyamasundara. Do not meditate upon Shyamasundara Krishna. If you are at all attached to your materialistic life, full of possessions and properties and quarrels in your social circles and all that sort of stuff, if you're attached to that, then please do not meditate upon Shyamasundara Krishna as he's standing down by the bank of the Jamuna at Vamsivat on the full moon night of the Sharad season in his threefold bending form, playing the fifth note on his flute. Don't meditate on that. So, Hare Krishna. So that's the supreme form. They're concentrating their mind on Shyamasundara. So we should also concentrate our minds on the form of the Lord. It's part of our meditation. We can go to the temple, of course, and see the incredible form of Sri Radha Damodar and how they're so nicely dressed. Just the other day, I was having darshan and I saw how Parijata Mataji had dressed them with all sorts of leaves from the forest and things. It was just amazing, absolutely amazing. And we should concentrate our mind, not just like glance over and or critique, but to concentrate the mind on the form of the Lord. That's the topmost meditation. And that's what they're doing by their yoga asana. It also implies that the purpose of the yoga asana is to meditate on the form of the Lord. And believe it or not, that's what we teach at the Bhakti Yoga Center also. We're starting a new course of yoga teacher trainees. They do a whole curriculum over the course of 4 months. And of course, they learn how to practice and teach yoga and get a certification. But we also go through all the philosophy and all the practice, and they do lots of chanting and kirtan. And we teach them that yoga is not just for toning the abs and shopping at Lululemon and getting that Instagram picture. As many young college girls are after those Instagram hashtags. But it's actually meant for concentrating the mind on the Supreme. So we're very fortunate that we get to protect people from the commercialized materialistic form of yoga that is so common nowadays, and actually introduce them to the real practice, as is demonstrated here by the prachetas. So let us do some yoga asana also. Sit upright, chant the holy names of the Lord, and concentrate on Snigdha Pravidghana Shama, the beautiful dark form of Shama Sundara Krishna. Hare Krishna. In the next paragraph, there's very interesting statements made. Very interesting, describing Narada Muni. And therein it says that Narada Muni is such a person, such a great person. He's worshipped both by demons and by demigods. Sura Asura Idya. Idya means worshipped. Worshipped both by the demons and by the demigods. He's quite a non-sectarian person. He's intercommunal. He is interspecies, interracial, not just international, but intergalactic, and loved by all. And this is a remarkable quality of a devotee, very, very rarely seen, but a remarkable quality of the devotee that's very possible for all of us. In fact, Srila Prabhupada in his purport seems to be implying that that should be our goal as well. He says a perfect Vaishnava's position should be just like Narada Muni's, completely independent and unbiased. What does it mean, though? I'm thinking out loud here. So also, if people want to contribute, feel free. But the first thing that comes to mind is the great prayer by Srinivasacharya in his description of the six Goswamis. It is said similarly that they are popular both with the gentle and with the ruffians. Who can remember that line? I used to sing it every day. Dhira adhira jana priya. Dhira dhira jana priya priya karo. Nirmatsaro pujito. The six Goswamis are popular both with the gentle and with the ruffians, the dhira and adhira. Dhira means those who are got their minds together. Let's just say that they have enough maturity to focus their minds. It's dhira. They're sober. And adhira, of course, they just haven't got it together. But the six Goswamis are popular with all of them. Dhira dhira jana priya priya karo nirmatsaro pujito, because and no one has any envy of them. And they have no envy of others. Amatsarya. Amatsarya means envy? I think so. They're not envious of anyone. Similarly, Prabhupada says here, but not even the demons envy Narada Muni. Therefore, he's equally worshipped both by demons and by demigods. A perfect Vaishnava's position should be just like Narada Muni's, completely independent and unbiased. So how do we become like Narada Muni? First, I'd like to make very clear, if I may, that we are supposed to become like Narada Muni. And we're supposed to become like Prahlad Maharaj. We can't be Narada Muni or be Prahlad Maharaj. Of course, they are their own person, just like we are individuals. But we're supposed to be like them. We're supposed to follow their example, follow their instructions, not imitate, but be like them. As opposed to sometimes the popular excuse that makes the rounds that, well, we can't do like that because we're not Narada Muni. Well, Prabhupada's saying here, you should be just like Narada Muni. A Vaishnava's position should be just like Narada Muni. Oh, thank you, Prabhu. You found this verse from Sad Goswami Astakam, the happy Goswami song. It's not the sad Goswami song. It's the happy Goswami song. Sorry. So we're supposed to be just like Narada Muni. We're supposed to be like Prahlad, Hanuman, all the great devotees of the Lord, Arjuna. We're not meant to, I don't see any verse that says well, they're just such great devotees, and so you can't try to be, don't even try to be like that. Well, no, otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of reading of the pastimes of Srimad Bhagavatam and the Lord's exchanges with the devotees if we're not meant to try to be like them? So here, Prabhupada's saying we should be just like Narada Muni. Popular with gentle and ruffians, with demons and demigods, not envied by anyone. How is it that we cannot be envied by anyone? How can we be popular with everyone? Well, if we are not envious, if we are not duplicitous in our exchanges and our dealings with others, if we are independent and unbiased, then we can also be loved by all. It's important to be loved by all, because then you can give Krishna consciousness to all. And that's Narada Muni's whole thing. That's his modus operandi, is just always giving Krishna consciousness to everyone, sometimes to demons, sometimes to demigods, sometimes to fortunate devotees in between. And because he is beloved by all, except for Daksha, with the exception of Daksha, he's beloved by all, and therefore he can give Krishna consciousness to everyone. So that should be our concern also, if we're engaged in Sankirtana. To not be exclusive, to not be sectarian, to not be biased or prejudiced. These things are very quickly recognized in this modern day. And there's no tolerance for it. There's no tolerance for any sort of religious prejudice these days. Not even a little bit. Nobody wants to hear it. Amongst intelligent people, nobody wants to hear religious prejudice, bias, or some sort of culture of dependency and control. It's not attractive. It's not attractive in Kali Yuga. It does not attract Krishna. It does not attract the conditioned souls. So the quality of Narada Muni that we're hearing about is very important for us if we hope to be a conduit of Krishna consciousness. Though we must remain independent and unbiased, non-envious, equal to all, broad-minded and liberal. This is the description given of great devotees of advanced consciousness, described in Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita. We need to have this mentality. If we have as our state of mind that I'm better than everyone, that everything that I do is better than, the karmis, the conditioned souls, then how can we possibly help them? I mean, let's be honest here. How can you possibly help someone if your motivation in Krishna consciousness is that you feel better than everybody else? Then what can you do for anybody else? You certainly can't uplift them. That would compromise your whole, I'm better than everybody else trip that you're on. Surely when many of us begin bhakti, that might be part of the motivation. I mean, we come here with all sorts of baggage. We got all sorts of things that inspire us and motivate us. And some of it might be, well, I want to be better than everybody else. I certainly felt like that. I had a partner at the time. When I met the devotees, I had a partner at the time we were both kind of into this Buddhism thing, and then we kind of broke up, and it was almost like out of spite. I'm going to show you, I'm going to do something better. The motivation was to be better than others. But there's no compassion in that position. There's no love. You can't be a conduit of bhakti, an emissary of devotion, unless you're unbiased, independent. Connecting with someone in a deep way in Krishna consciousness requires communication. Communication means what you have in common, not what is the differences between us, but what we have in common. That's the basis of communication. What we have in common with every living entity in every species of life, in every part of the universe and other universes, is that we all desire loving exchange with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, Shama Sundara, Gana Sham. We all desire loving connection with the Supreme. Some people aren't aware of it, but they can learn. Most of us are aware of it. That's what we have in common. That's what we need to communicate. If we're communicating instead all sorts of things which divide and which conquer and which put a person down and which stifle them, then they will not grow in bhakti. So this can be a little challenging because we do have our institution. We do have our community. It is different from others. We're not supposed to be independent of our ISKCON. We're not supposed to be independent of the guidelines that Srila Prabhupada has given us, that's come through Parampara. We can be interdependent. I don't know if anybody's ever read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's quite a good book, actually. And they're really just talking about sattva guna stuff. And in it, he talks about dependency and independence and then interdependence as being superior to both dependence and independence. A person who's dependent, of course, doesn't have much freedom, and freedom is necessary for expressing love of God. Can't do it by force. And when one is restricted, Narada Muni also is described as being quite free. At the end of the 6th chapter of the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it says that he wandered freely wherever he wanted to. He's totally free to wander any place. So that freedom is also necessary for love. And if we're dependent, of course, there's limited freedom for expression of love of Krishna. If we're independent, of course, then we're lacking in the wonderful value of community. If we're independent, then we miss out on serving with others, inspiring in others. There's more potential for some conflict, of course. Interdependent, I think, is what we should all aspire for in our ISKCON communities. Interdependent means I need the association of devotees. I need the structure and the organization created by ISKCON and its managers, its leaders, its members. I need that. I need the association of devotees, and I need the guidance of a well-established community, which has standards all over the world. I need that. And also, they need me. ISKCON needs us. Our community needs us too. This is interdependence. They need us. Our community depends on everybody putting in as much as they can, as best as they can, with love, with affection, with devotion, serving, despite whatever difficulties inevitably arise in the Kali Yuga. We all need each other. That's the interdependence Stephen Covey was talking about. And it makes for very healthy relationships, and healthy relationships makes for very rapid progress in Krishna consciousness. So when Prabhupada's saying here that a perfect Vaishnava's position should be just like Narada Muni's, completely independent and unbiased, I don't think he means that we should all become Babaji. That's kind of the Babaji status or the Avaduta status. I just kind of like to do anything. I'm not really obliged to anyone, anywhere. I'm just kind of in my own spiritual world. I don't think that's what Prabhupada's getting at here. But one of the symptoms of our advancement in Krishna consciousness is that we become so well situated, so confident in our love of Krishna, that we can be interdependent without any risk of all of those negative things that come in Kali Yuga with any sort of organization. I mean, any sort of organization that has a few humans trying to do something together, it's going to have its issues. There'll be some challenges and some conflicts. It's inevitable. But if we maintain a culture of interdependence, that I need you and you need me, then that's very healthy. It's very healthy for our relationships. And we grow in Krishna consciousness. So that's what I've always tried to do, at least. Independent and unbiased, just like Narada Muni. Let's not take this purport as an excuse to distance ourselves from the Sangha of devotees. Because let's be honest, sometimes we have our challenges in the community. We have our challenges with the institution. There's no shortage in the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, known as Kali Yuga. These things happen. And sometimes, we like to hear some justifications for distancing ourselves from the Sangha of devotees. This is a very dangerous thing. And I don't think that's what Srila Prabhupada's getting at here. I hear it all the time. A man is in the ashram for a long time. He's served for so many years. He's tried his best to be brahmachari and give his golden years, not golden years, that's in your old age, his youthful years in service to the mission. And then, when he decides, I've got to change ashram, it's time for me to move on and do something else, then oftentimes there isn't a lot of support. There isn't a lot of opportunities for him. He can be left feeling like, I gave the best and I didn't get much in return. Now I'm kind of left out. We see this very often. It's tragic, unfortunately. And then they, if they become frustrated by their position, they start to blame others for their position. Well, it's because of this temple president or because of this GBC. I gave the best that I could, and now I don't have anything, and I can't do anything. And they start to become envious. And then the justifications for distancing oneself from the Sangha of devotees starts to come out. I know nobody in this Bhagavatam class is like that. That's why you're here. You're in Bhagavatam class, associating with devotees. But we should recognize that this happens very often. We should see the symptoms and especially extend ourselves to those persons. When you start hearing these sort of justifications, they make the rounds, Well, we're supposed to, ISKCON's not supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be like that. Prabhupada said like this. It didn't say like that. This devotee, I can't serve Krishna because of this devotee and that devotee. This is Maya. This is Maya getting into our heads. Maya is trying to take you away from Krishna. That's her job. Well, for the devotee, she's challenging us to see, do you really, really want Krishna? So one of the ways Maya gets into your heads and makes some excuse. Oh, I don't need to be in the Sangha of devotees. They're all not very Krishna conscious anyway. I'm so much more Krishna conscious than them. And they're all doing it wrong. I'm the only one who does it right. This is Maya getting into our head. If it convinces us that I should be independent of the Sangha of devotees, then we should know for certain it is Maya. My spiritual master sometimes chokes. He says that the joy of Grihastha life is that you sit around the dinner table enjoying prasadam with your spouse, talking about how everybody else does it wrong. Because Grihasthas are independent, they have their own, they can do bhakti in their own ways, their own capacity, their own styles. So he said the joy of Grihastha is sarcasm, of course, but the joy of Grihastha life is to sit around the prasadam table talking about how everybody else does it wrong. I'm the only one who does it right. We might have all sorts of thoughts like this, but if it causes us to be independent of the Sangha of devotees, then we should know for certain that it is Maya. We might have our disagreements with devotees. We might see imperfections, flaws, even outright conflicts, whatever. But if that somehow becomes the motivation to be independent of the association of devotees, then we should know for certain that it's simply Maya. So sometimes these justifications, they make the rounds. Of course, when there's some issue or some problem, some controversy, then more people start to feel like that. Maybe I should distance myself from the devotees. Don't get too close to the devotees. Maybe they'll try to take advantage of me. Maybe they'll try to control me. Maybe they'll hurt me. Maybe not, maybe. But what is certain is that in the association of the devotees, the hearing and chanting about Krishna is so much more blissful, so much more potent, and so much more pleasing to Krishna. So we must stay in the association of devotees, regardless of whatever may come in Kali Yuga. And I think that's what's really described here about Narada Muni. It's not about being independent, like I don't need anybody else, but an interdependence. I can still choose to be in the association of devotees, to give the best of my time and energy to Prabhupada's ISKCON. I can choose to make that offering because I'm interdependent. That's the position of Narada Muni. Whether they're demigods or demons, still he gives inspiration to all. Still he associates with all and gives them Krishna consciousness. Of course, there's no one in our sanghas who are demons. We've had devotees who are troubled and have sometimes acted inappropriately, and things happen. Sometimes mistakes are made, but there's no one in our sangha who are demons. All devotees are demigods, or better. And Narada Muni is independent and unbiased. He associates, he serves, gives inspiration, inspires in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada's saying we should be like that. A perfect Vaishnava's position should be just like Narada Muni's. Completely independent and unbiased. That means that you have the choice to stay in the association of devotees despite whatever challenges may be there. You have the choice. That's your independence. You have the choice to choose service to Krishna in ISKCON, at Gitanagari, even if there's some conflicts. That's our choice to make. That's our independence. And that's what's pleasing to Krishna. So I think it's very important for us to be like Narada Muni. Review our relationship with the institution, with Prabhupada's society. I like the word society a little bit better, to be honest. That's what he called it, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We should review our relationship with the society. If we're just thinking about, oh, this thing happened or that thing happened, and surprised that Kali Yuga affects the devotees sometimes also, then that's Maya. It's just Maya if it coerces us to distance ourselves from the association of devotees. It's nothing but Maya. But if we be like Narada Muni, completely independent and unbiased, dhira adhira, compassionate and loving towards both the gentle and the ruffians, then we can always find a way to give the best of ourselves to Prabhupada's community. I want to finish with a statement from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He said something along these lines, a very interesting statement about how we must look after our brothers. Hold on. It's going to be worth it. Oh yeah, and his Sajjana Toshini, he says, it is the duty of an intelligent person to try to purify the sampradaya after joining it. Let me just read that again from his Sajjana Toshini. It is the duty of an intelligent person to try to purify the sampradaya after joining it. And I found this very interesting because it is by the mercy of the sampradaya, the disciplic succession, that we are purified, that we become Krishna conscious. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur is kind of flipping the script in this statement, saying that, we also have to consider, am I contributing to the society such that it also becomes uplifted and purified? Or am I just like trying to take? Am I putting all the responsibility on others? It's your responsibility, ISKCON, to give me everything in Krishna consciousness, to make everything happen for me. It's the responsibility of the guru to make it all happen for me. It's the responsibility of the temple president to make it all happen for me. Is that our relationship with the society? Here, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, you've joined the sampradaya. We are very fortunate to come in contact with the Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya through Srila Prabhupada. And we've been graced with Krishna consciousness. And now it's our duty to also uplift the society, to contribute, to make it better. And if we just look at some problem here or there, some little conflict here or there, or big conflict, and make that an excuse to distance ourselves from the community, then we're not doing true to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He's saying it's our duty to give, to purify the sampradaya after joining it. So that's what I get from this purport here. Prabhupada's saying that a perfect Vaishnava's position should be just like Narada Muni's, completely independent and unbiased. We should know that our independence means that we have the choice to give our best to Prabhupada's community, to always uplift it, to always inspire others, and not to allow any excuse to push us out of the association of the devotees. We shouldn't think that this is impossible. Narada Muni can do it, and so we're supposed to do it too. That's why we're reading about Narada Muni. If we're not supposed to do it, then what's the point of reading about Narada Muni? What's the point? No, we're also meant to be like Narada Muni. And that would be very healthy for us individually and collectively. So, Hare Krishna. I said a few controversial statements. So I hope that is interesting enough to keep everyone awake. I'd like to hear if there's some comments or some questions.
I have some. I mean, somebody put their hand up while I was talking, but if you don't mind, I have something.
Yes.
I'll take a moment because I'm senior enough to forget my point if I have to wait a little longer. So the statement that you read about Bhaktivinoda Thakur can have serious consequences, as we have seen that some groups of devotees have splintered from the ISKCON society, which Prabhupada gave specific instructions not to leave the society, to do whatever you can do within the society. And they have their own explanation of what Prabhupada said. And it's usually, and I'm generalizing here, associated with literalism and to take in some of Prabhupada's statements as universal, where they are just not really. There's some basic statements, and there are some statements that even by Prabhupada's admission that he said, I'm not a doctor, I can't give medical advice, so as far as how the instructions should be taken. So some are taking the cause without understanding the consequences of their actions, just as purifying the sampradaya means getting rid of everything else except what Prabhupada said, literally. So how do you reconcile the dichotomy there?
Okay. I'll try to be brief because there's a lot of hands up, but I think you're talking about sometimes, yes, devotees, they have I would say a little pedantic view of the practice, very orthodox. And, there's value in that, of course, trying to stick with the traditions and trying to do everything exactly as Srila Prabhupada has done. And of course, we should try to be true to the spirit of what Srila Prabhupada wants by carefully, studying his statements in all sorts of different situations. But I don't think we need to justify it because inevitably by time things change. I think it's a challenge for those who are attached to the orthodox practice of Krishna consciousness to just kind of come to terms with that. Krishna says, Kala, what does he say in chapter 4, Bhagavad Gita? Kala Nashta, by the influence of time, even the culture of yoga is destroyed. It changes. I just hope that those the devotees can still be broad-minded and accepting of other devotees who have, maybe a more liberal or progressive application of Krishna consciousness. We should all try to be broad-minded and see that there are many ways to serve Krishna. And if some are attached to a more orthodox traditional way or conservative way, then that's great. And they can inspire others as best as they can. And they should also be happy with devotees who are serving Krishna in a more liberal and or adaptive way. But that requires broad-mindedness on the part of all of us. That's why that verse was quoted by Srila Prabhupada so many times, right? what is, you all know the verse, kama, sarva kama, vamoksha kama udharadi, tivrena bhakti yogena, udharadi, that we have to have this broad-mindedness, that all sorts of things can be directed towards Krishna. That's my answer to that. I think that inevitably, by the influence of time, everything changes, and devotees who are attached to a traditional orthodox practice of Krishna consciousness aren't going to win against the influence of time. Better to adapt and try to stay true to the spirit of Prabhupada's mission. That's my opinion. Hare Krishna. I hope that answer is somewhat satisfying. Because it's just not worth it to have a conflict over that and allow devotees to, or to coerce devotees to distance themselves from our beautiful community over things like orthodox or unorthodox practice. That's not significant enough to dissolve community. I don't feel like that's significant enough to just be like, well, I can't associate with that person because they practice their Krishna consciousness a little bit differently. I try not to do that, at least. Our association with devotees is so valuable. We have to be able to overlook just some slight differences, Person dresses like this, okay, person dresses like that, and one person chants kirtan of this style and that style. Within our own circle of influence, we can, we can try to convince people this is how we should serve Krishna. And that's totally fair and justified, but we should never I can't associate with that devotee because of the way that they serve Krishna. I don't know. I don't do it like that personally. I don't want to miss out on all that value of that Vaishnava, even if they do it differently from me. And there are some devotees, they're just so different. I remember this Prabhu would come to Los Angeles and I'd take him out on book distribution. He was one of those ones no stitched cloth, had to wear the wooden shoes. And we were out doing books in LA and it was cold. Sometimes it gets cold in LA. I said, Prabhu, we'll buy you a jacket. He just had the 10,000 shutters all around him. It was because it was so cold. I said, we'll get you a jacket. This is New Dwarka. There's no shortage of funds here. I remember he was Irish. He said, I'd rather eat my own flesh than wear stitched cloth. He said he'd rather eat his own flesh than wear stitched cloth. And I just thought, this guy's just Hare Krishna. But I still love him, even though we're so different. I'm definitely not like that. I will wear stitched cloth very happily if it's cold outside, but I still love him. We can't just give up some Vaishnava Sangha just because they're a little different from us. Even in Goloka Vrindavan, even amongst the gopis, there are different groups. There's different ways of serving Krishna. There's different moods. Can we not accommodate some variety within our community also? We can. It requires a broad-minded intelligence. I think we should focus on that before we focus on how everybody else is doing it wrong. Okay, I'll stop now. Hare Krishna. Anyone else want to comment? Tarika Prabhu, of course, has his hand up. Dasya Prem. And is that Sri Goloka Prabhu? Haribol.
Yeah, oh my God. There is so much to discuss. Oh my God, we could give a few days classes on some of the subject matter here. Well, what are we going to do?
Let's do it. It's Saturday. Why not?
It's 8:00. We out of time. Should we continue or?
I mean, maybe just a few minutes. I guess in the temple they have to sign out so they can have darshan. So maybe we could ask.
I mean, technically, we can continue even if the darshan is going on.
I think the topic is important enough that we can justify. The devotees will mute the temple computer and we can continue.
Let's have a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes, if devotees would like to stay with us. If not, enjoy your darshan of the Lord and Hare Krishna. Have a good day.
All right then. I need to prioritize my topics here. A bunch of things to contribute, but most of them are low priority relative to this issue of purifying the sampradaya. It shouldn't need to be said, but I feel like I should say it anyway, that critical, essential to Krishna consciousness, of course, is the strict maintenance of the parampara, that we remain what's the word I'm looking for? We have to maintain the fidelity to the instructions of the previous acharyas, and especially our founder acharya. As you say, things do change over time, and there are periodically adjustments made by various acharyas in order to best fit the mission to the prevailing conditions. Those changes are made by highly advanced individuals, self-realized souls who are qualified to do so. It's important to understand that changes are not made by just anyone at all. And so it's not that any devotee on a whim can decide that, well, this or that has changed in such and such ways, and I think we need to bend and stretch to accommodate this or that. There are changes, sometimes dramatic changes, that are made by various acharyas, and they are meant to stand for a significant period of time before there's a necessity to make additional adjustments. In the case of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada established a particular set of standards and systems that we understand is supposed to work for a very long time. Srila Prabhupada describes that his purports were actually dictated by Krishna himself. And his books have been described even by he himself as all books for mankind for the next 10,000 years. It's a pretty long period of time, but Srila Prabhupada charged us, particularly his disciples, with the responsibility of maintaining the purity of his Siddhanta. And as I say, he made a bunch of changes, so it's a little bit different than what was practiced previously. But there are a great many things that simply do not change. Essential principles will not change because the human predicament does not change. Certain things remain always the same. And so the fundamental principles of Krishna consciousness are not going to change. Srila Prabhupada made some adjustments. I personally have not seen any instance in which any standard established by Srila Prabhupada needed to be changed. The world has changed, society has changed, the culture has changed, but as far as I can see, all of what Srila Prabhupada established still works well. And some will disagree, I'm sure, but personally, I don't see any necessity for any kind of change at this point in time. And based upon my understanding of Srila Prabhupada's instructions, I regard many of the changes that have been introduced after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance as actual deviations from Srila Prabhupada's Siddhanta. I just don't see a necessity for them. It is, of course, very, very dangerous to make unauthorized changes. How do we gain authorization for a change? In the absence of Srila Prabhupada's personal presence, we have only the instructions that he left with us to rely upon. So those who make changes must be fully with all of those instructions. It's a lot of material to assimilate.
Taraka Prabhu, can you give some examples of what you consider deviations? I'm interested.
Oh gosh. Really, to get into some of those deviations would really draw out the length of this discussion, because I would have to explain at length. It would take length to explain specifically why I feel it's a deviation. It means I would have to make specific reference to Srila Prabhupada's words and point out how there is actually a specific conflict between what was said by Srila Prabhupada and what is being done. So
I withdraw my request.
Yeah, we can have that conversation. I could point out a bunch of examples, but to really address that properly, it would require a lot more time. Anyway, my point, my real point, and I have one besides the point on the top of my head, is that making changes is dangerous. My understanding of the statement of Bhaktivinoda Thakur about purifying the sampradaya is that there is necessity for constant vigilance and a need to constantly bring the Siddhanta back in line with the previous acharyas, because the natural tendency is that gradually there is a creeping away, a drifting. In ISKCON, we often speak about mission drift. And there is mission drift. Mission drift is a real thing. We get diverted by all kinds of things that are contrary to principles laid out by our previous acharyas, and seems like a good idea, seems to make sense. Sometimes we do it for a specific purpose, but after time we forget why we did that, and it just becomes a part of the Siddhanta, which does not belong there. So maybe I can give an example here. Sometimes varieties of welfare activity. We might do something for the sake of public relations, but it actually is not part of our philosophy. We are concerned with the ultimate welfare, which is to propagate Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada did not want it to be the purpose of ISKCON to concern itself with, say, the opening of hospitals or providing necessities for the needy. He explained that there are already lots of people who are engaged in doing that. There are very few devotees in the world, relatively speaking, and so their time and effort is very precious. It must not be diverted to any other purpose, because the purpose of propagating Krishna consciousness is so extremely important that it means that we have to focus. We can't be diverted to any other activity. But sometimes, for the sake of preaching, we adopt some other means that is extraneous, but then we have to be careful that it doesn't become construed by the members of our society to be actually a part of the Siddhanta. Gosh, I could go on to this topic for a while. There are a bunch of other things that I thought were worth discussing. Maybe we should just focus on this. Perhaps some others have additional comments in this same vein. I just want to stress the importance of the maintenance of the Siddhanta. I know there are lots of devotees who characterize themselves as progressive and believe that it's important to bend with the times. While I would agree that the differences between individuals should not be a basis for disassociating ourselves, that would be useless and counterproductive. As far as I can see, the essential principles of Krishna consciousness are always applicable because they are simply timeless. They are timeless. It doesn't matter how society changes. There are lots of devotees who think that presently there is a necessity for a number of changes to be implemented. And I don't know, in 50 years of Krishna consciousness, I have not seen that any aspect of society has changed to such an extent that it warrants a change in our approach to Krishna consciousness. There's always room for experimentation. If we find a new approach that seems to work better, there's no reason not to implement that. But there are, Srila Prabhupada established a proven, a tried and true system, which worked then and still works now. Some people will give as an example to the contrary that, well, once upon a time we distributed books everywhere, and now many of those environments are we're no longer allowed to distribute books there, and so we have to find other means, other ways. Some people think maybe it's time to move away from the distribution of hard copies of the books, because now we have digital versions, and we have the internet. There's a great many different ways that certainly these kinds of things can be added, but hard copies of Srila Prabhupada's books are always going to have immense value. And in the event that, these are just examples, if at some point or other there is some disruption to society, a collapse of the grid or whatever, a loss of the internet in wartime, all kinds of things can happen. Pandemics, major pandemics, not like this so-called pandemic, which was not particularly serious relative to things that we have seen historically. But books become very important then. Our acharyas, our most recent acharyas, stressed the importance of printing books because those books are always going to be valuable. We can't rely upon the internet or digital versions of the books that may not always be available to us, but the books are always important. So, gosh, Let me just briefly just touch on a few other things with regards to independence. Of course, Srila Prabhupada always discouraged devotees from working independently of the Society of Devotees. And at the same time, he encouraged us as a society to be independent of the greater society in this regard, that we don't want to take their association. We don't want to, and on the one hand, we don't want to be completely independent, because our mission is to give Krishna consciousness to them. So we can't be completely aloof, completely isolated from them. But the independence means that although we interact with them, it's a one-sided affair. We give them our association. We don't take their association. There is a principle that when you are dependent upon an individual, an entity, an organization, whatever it may be, a government, you then become, to one extent or another, beholden to that source. You are subject to influence. And it is for this reason that Srila Prabhupada greatly stressed the importance of being independent of society. His idea for the establishment of farm communities was to provide a means for the devotees to exist in the world independently of the rest of society. He used the term very regularly, self-independent, that we would not need to rely upon the society of non-devotees for our essentials, for our sustenance in particular, because that ultimately the result of that is that it results in a compromise in consciousness. There was one letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote to Yasomati Nandana, very famous letter, which is speaking about farm communities. And in that letter, he says, the whole idea is that we are ISKCON, a community to be independent from outside help. And he goes on to speak about specific ways in which our farm communities should be independent and competent to by their own necessities. It's an important message, particularly for our Gitanagari community. This is our specific mission. We have that mandate to develop things along those lines. I don't want to hog all the time here. I will wrap up by saying that we each have individually an immense responsibility to know forward and backward the Siddhanta established by our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. That will equip us to contend with whatever comes at us. Changes in society, we will understand, based upon Srila Prabhupada's instructions, how to adapt, how to take advantage of opportunities, how to avoid the pitfalls, because Srila Prabhupada was no fool. He gave us very detailed instruction, explained how to contend with everything. Many of the differences that, in my experience, the differences between devotees and what sometimes separates them is that they have a dramatically different understanding, because of the limit to which they have been exposed to Srila Prabhupada's instructions. It's a great challenge because there is so much. You can spend your entire lifetime trying to assimilate all of what Srila Prabhupada gave us in recordings and in writing. But that's the job. I feel confident that if everyone would hear and read very extensively, many of the differences would evaporate. We would be unified by a common understanding and a common purpose. Anyway, I've taken a lot of time. There are others that would like to comment, and maybe they've already left us. I'm sorry, I apologize. I could go on for several days on some of these topics, and this is a poor presentation. I really need to prepare in advance so that I can express more clearly what's on my mind. But feel pretty strongly about it. I'm very defensive of Srila Prabhupada's movement, and it's my life. It's my whole life. I've spent nearly my entire life doing this. It means everything to me, and so I get a little emotional about it.
We appreciate your loving expression, Prabhu. We all recognize your love for Srila Prabhupada and your love for ISKCON, and we are honored that you express that in our association. I can't give any conclusive answers to the concerns you've expressed, of course, but I can at least express my appreciation for your confidence in Srila Prabhupada's application of devotional service to Krishna.
Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for a nice class, very thought-provoking and interesting. Wish we had more time to discuss. There are other topics that I think are important, but I don't want to take any more time. Another day. Thanks again. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I think we'll have many lifetimes. At least I'll be here next lifetime. Anyone else? I know Dasi Prem had his hand up, but I think he's probably left now. So I guess we'll wrap up here unless any of the devotees would also like to comment something. It's Saturday morning, and probably people have things to do. So I guess we'll finish there. There's no further comments. But again, thank you, Tarika Prabhu. Although, yes, we appreciate you so much. And I'm obviously, as you've well figured out by now, I do put myself in more of a liberal camp, a progressive camp. But I recognize that part of being liberal is to also value the more conservative view and all the different ways that bhakti can be applied. And so when you speak about your experience in bhakti and your lifetime of service to ISKCON, it means a lot to me, because I think that that's essential for where I am now. Even if I'm one who believes that things must inevitably adapt and change, I still recognize at least that what you have done in service to ISKCON now is essential for where I am now. And I hope that honors you sufficiently, Prabhu. I hope that you can still love me as your bhakti son.
Nothing you can do that's going to make me love you any less. I love all the devotees dearly. I would take a bullet for any devotee, anytime. There's nothing they can do that will change that. With all the differences between us, which will always be there because we are eternally individuals, and everyone has their own unique perspective. We're all always going to have different ideas about things. But hopefully, what we will all always have in common is an interest in serving Guru and Krishna to the best of our capacity. We may differ on how best to do that, and that's okay. That's not a problem, and that's not a reason for us to disassociate or dislike one another. Sometimes we feel really strongly about how something should be done, and that's kind of an ISKCON tradition from the earliest days. Our biggest leaders and the most advanced devotees in our movement have sometimes fought ferociously over how best to serve Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. When the GBC gets together, if you think it's the GBC meetings are a quiet, respectful, orderly affair, you have never experienced a GBC meeting. I can tell you that GBC meetings are often incredibly contentious, and sometimes really serious arguments take place. They can get quite heated, and voices are raised, and things get slammed, and people storm around. Devotees get very emotional about devotional service. It's a deadly serious thing to devotees, and they take strong positions on things. But in spite of it all, our GBC and the devotees remain staunchly lovers of one another. We appreciate one another. We love one another. In spite of all of our differences, we all have common lineage, and there's far more that unites us than there are differences, and we never overlook that fact. Some people feel that some people feel they need to separate, and as you say, that's just Maya. It's just Maya. It's unfortunate for them. I think most of my God siblings have left ISKCON. This astounds me. I understand their problems, and they've undergone all kinds of trauma. They've been through a lot of things. I understand because I lived through all of that. I experienced it too, but I haven't gone away. I'm not going to go away. I will never go away. God help me. I am here forever. Like herpes, there's no getting rid of it. Never going away. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We love your enthusiasm, Tarakapu. Thank you so much. You're an inspiration for all of us. Thank you. But it is 8:30, and I gotta go deal with my children. So if that's all right, we'll wrap up here. So thank you, everybody. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Radha Damodar ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari 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 Bol.